Wow. Take-Two just had the worst presentation in the history of gaming. Take-Two just had the worst gaming presentation in the history of games. I mean, this is just unbelievable. They basically for an, for a whole hour, for a whole hour, talked about diversity and equity and just weird woke stuff for an hour in a gaming presentation. I mean, just listen to this guy for like for a minute. Just listen to this guy.
I'm Alan Lewis, Vice President of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs for Take-Two Interactive. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to Virtual E3 2021. Take-Two, like many organizations, is deeply committed to and actively involved in numerous initiatives to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion within our society and industry. Affecting meaningful, sustainable change is a continuous process, and there is no one solution that can achieve that goal. We believe that to enact change, especially for those in underserved and underrepresented communities, there needs to be a continuum of activism.
So yeah, I mean, imagine this and more. They actually had several people. They actually had several people, maybe even more. Yeah, they had like eight people, eight people talking about diversity and yeah, equity, weird, woke, stuff. That I mean, everything. Well, almost everything has a time and place, but this wasn't the time. This wasn't the place. This wasn't the setting. This wasn't the audience. I mean, this is E3. It's supposed to be about the games. It's supposed to be a celebration about games, celebration about gamers. It's supposed to be to show off your newest and greatest games. They Take Two spent an entire hour lecturing their audience. Take Two, again, Take Two, one of the worst corporations in the industry, with some of the worst monetization in the industry. I mean, their sports games, their NBA games, their sports games, they have some of the worst, some of the most nickel and diming monetization in the entire industry. And Take Two, this this corporation, basically nickel and dimes every single player, every single gamer. They lectured their audience for an entire hour about diversity and equity and all of that stuff. Again, in a E3 setting. I mean, again, people were expecting to see games, to see new games. And what did they get? They got 1 hour lecture. As someone said, if I wanted to be lectured to, I'd go to church. If I wanted to be preached to, I'd go to church. So basically, this was that. This was basically them preaching wokeism. Them preaching quote woke. Again, they spent almost an hour lecturing and preaching to their audience about equity and diversity, racism, and all of this stuff. I mean, this was they basically had a corporate Zoom meeting about diversity, and they basically had you watching. Why even have an E3 event if they're going to talk about everything else except the games? Again and again, this is Take Two. Take Two. They have some of the worst monetization policies in the entire industry. In the entire industry. I mean, every single thing in their sports games is basically behind the paywall. Every single thing, stuff that you could do, back in the day, stuff that you could do that was free, that you can unlock. Now everything is behind the paywall, and there's player cards, new players, new shirts, new. I mean, everything is monetized. And again, most of their players are not even adults. Most of their players are teenagers and kids who are using their parents' credit cards, and most of these parents don't even know their children, their kids are using their credit cards. So yeah, Take Two is going to lecture you about diversity. Yeah, and that's what they did. For a whole hour, they lectured the gamers about diversity. They didn't even talk about one game. Not one game. They did not talk about one game. For almost an hour, they basically lectured you about diversity. Just like how they nickel and dime their player base, their audience, their consumers in their games, how they're nickel and diming you. That's what they did here. They nickel and dime you about wokeism, about diversity, about equity, this type of stuff. And again, why is this in a gaming event? I mean, people thought E3 2019 was bad, and people thought the Xbox event was bad because they announced that there would be a lot of gameplay, and it turns out it was basically 99% cinematic trailers. But this event, and especially uh, this presentation by Take Two, was one of the worst, if not the worst, presentation in all of history in gaming. I mean, I don't know what's. I don't remember anything that's worse than this. I think, yeah. I mean, this is the worst event in history of gaming. To waste a whole hour, to waste people's time, a whole hour of people's times to talk about equity. And again, it's one thing if angels came down from the sky and started talking about, I don't know, equity and I don't know, diversity and I don't know. But again, this is a giant corporation that's basically scamming their consumers. They're abusing teenagers and kids out of their parents' money, and they're here lecturing gamers how bad they are. Lecturing gamers how bad they are. I mean, I don't know. Like, the worst presentation in the history of gaming. And again, what they actually have they actually have people who work as quote diversity employees in their company. They're paying people to basically do nothing. Instead of hiring people to create better games, they're actually hiring people who then lecture other people about diversity. I mean, yeah, the worst presentation in history of gaming, period. Like whole hour wasted of gamers talking about diversity. Not even one game was mentioned. So yeah, that's it for today, and see you guys next time.